Gotta make sure I look decent.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our Secretary of State candidate, Monica Yatooma. So I'm sure she'll take questions.
Thanks, Mark. So can I pull it out? Okay, yeah. I'm very ADHD. I can't stand in one spot. So I'm gonna do this. Okay. Hi, guys. So, is there anybody that hasn't met me and hasn't heard my spiel? Yes? Oh, fantastic. I love that. Okay. Well, for those of you that have already met me and have heard my spiel, I'm going to apologize in advance because you're going to hear me again. Oh. Okay. All right. Okay. So, Monica Yatooma, Secretary of State. I know today you guys are here and you're seeing me as a Secretary of State candidate. But more importantly than that, I'm a wife. I'm married to my husband, Randy. We've been married for 16 years, and we have 3 beautiful children together. I like to say that they're perfect because I'm their mom. So Sloan is 14, and my son Noah is 13, and I have a daughter, Sage, who's 11 years old. And they definitely keep me on my toes. And so Sage, my mom says Sage is my payback. She's a spitting image of me. And that's great. I say she's going to be strong and have a great personality, and no one's ever going to be able to mess with her, but trying to parent that right now is really, really hard. So I'm a very devout Christian. I'm Catholic, more specifically, of Chaldean descent. I'm Middle Eastern, and so my parents immigrated here from Iraq, but I'm born and raised here in Southeast Michigan. And my parents came here because they were heavily persecuted for their Christian faith. And they came to America specifically because the friends and family that they had that were already here told them all these great stories about the auto industry and the economic prosperity, and then all you had to do was come here and work really hard, and you could be successful. And so they came here and they did that. And so, of course, I have 2 sisters, so we're 3 girls, and we all followed in their footsteps. And in my mid-20s, I started my own company. So I'm the CEO of a biohazardous medical waste management company. Started that around the age of 25. And we now operate statewide, and we've got a couple of clients outside of the state of Michigan. And so I have several hundred drivers, I manage employees in different departments, and I can manage budgets, multiple budgets at the same time. And all these things are going to be really important going into the Secretary of State's office. These are skills that are directly transferable to that office. And so what I like to tell people, there's a few different reasons why I decided to run. My kids, obviously, first and foremost, but being in the industry that I'm in, it's a very strict compliance industry, and something I've noticed over the years is that our state, our local, and our federal officials, they're not held to the same standards that we are. Because if I had done just a fraction of the things that Jocelyn Benson has done to bend or break the law, in my industry, I'd be fined hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if I had done just as much as she's done, I actually would be sitting in jail today where she belongs. So for me, that double standard, unacceptable. And it's one of the reasons I decided to jump in. So I mentioned I work in a strict compliance environment. So on a regular basis, I deal with OSHA and LARA and the EPA and the DOT. And so I also work in an environment that's strong and very strict, chain of custody and documentation, because medical waste, from point of generation, to disposal, it has to be documented, logged, and tracked every step of the way, because that's how we avoid a public health and safety issue or hazard. It's really important. There's no room for error, because if we make mistakes, it costs me financially, and I'll have big problems legally. And so these things are important, again, going into the Secretary of State's office. But I like to tell people to replace the word medical waste with elections, or our ballots, or our voter records, because it's that same rigor and that same discipline that I would run our elections with, and our Secretary of State's office. And because I've worked elections before, I know the process. So I know what to do exactly getting in there on day one. I got involved after 2020. Like a lot of you, I was really upset about the election, and I thought, all right, I don't know how I just went to bed thinking I was gonna wake up to President Trump, and somehow I got Joe Biden. And for all 4 of those years, I could never get myself to call him, I can't even say it now, but President Joe Biden. Yeah, I would just call him Joe Biden. Yeah, Joe Schmo. It was a frustrating time, for sure. And I called my state rep, and I called my state senator, it was Jim Runstead and Ryan Berman at the time, and I said, how does this happen? Teach me. I want to learn. So I am the product of, my parents and myself, who everything I've done has been, we built it from the ground up. Hard work is it's a part of our DNA. It's in our blood. And I said, how do I get involved? And he said, Monica, usually people like you, they jump in and they think, oh, let me throw my money around and run for something big. He said, you know what you should do? He said, you should become a precinct delegate. He says, the bottom of the totem pole, and now that I think about that, I'm a little offended. But he said, it's the bottom of the totem pole, but start there. You'll learn how the party works. You'll get to meet and network and connect with everybody. And I said, okay, that doesn't sound so bad. So I did that. I became a precinct delegate, worked my way up to the executive committee of the Oakland County Republican Party. Last year, the county elected me to go to the RNC to be a national delegate for Trump. It was a beautiful experience. So I got to see and learn a lot of different things. I am somebody, when I do something, I don't just do it for the sake of doing it, right? When I became a precinct delegate, I did the work. I knocked on doors, supported conservative candidates, real conservative candidates. I made the phone calls and I did my part, because that's what becoming a delegate is about. During COVID, I got really pissed off, especially when I had to see my kids being masked, especially when my kids couldn't go to school. And I got frustrated again, and I said, how does this happen? How does this government overreach get so bad that they can tell me that I can't leave my home, and that if my kid wants to go to school, they have to put a mask on, and that if I want to go to Home Depot or go grocery shopping, I have to put a mask on? So needless to say, I got kicked out of a lot of different places. But then I got upset enough to where I said, you know what? I'm getting parents together, because there's all these mad parents and all these mad people, but everybody's just screaming and nobody's doing anything. So called my state rep again, and I said, who's in charge of this? How does this work? And they said, well, the purse strings are tied, the purse strings of the health department are tied to the Board of Commissioners. I said, no problem. Got all over social media. I started talking to parents when we were going to school board meetings and speaking out at school board meetings. And I said, I'm going to the Board of Commissioners, and I'm going to make comment, and you all should come with me. I showed up that day, and there was 1,500 other parents there. Yeah, I tell you guys, if you're willing to do the work, we can get stuff done. And it was great. I mean, there were so many of us, we didn't all get to make comment, but I got to make public comment. They got to hear what I had to say. And so, we did that, and then from there, I ended up filing a lawsuit. I filed a couple of different lawsuits because I wanted one of them to stick, and it did. But I filed a lawsuit to have the mask mandate dropped. And so that was successful. The rest of the counties across the state followed, and then I thought, okay, my work here is done. This is exhausting. Just gonna go back to doing my thing, right? Running my company, being my kids' volleyball coach and coaching basketball and all the things I love to do. And then the Democrats took a blue sweep in 2022. I thought, oh, why can't these Republicans get it right? So I was like, okay, back to the drawing board, what do we do? So I realized that while somebody like me might have access to financial and legal resources to protect my family and my kids, the average family across the state didn't have that kind of access. And I thought, this is why they're being taken advantage of. So how can I help? So I took the attorneys from the lawsuit, got together with one of the parents that had been fighting alongside with me. His name is Nathan Paul. He became my business partner, and we created Great Education Initiative, a 501c3. So took the attorneys from the lawsuit, started GEI, and we used those attorneys to use an MCL that protected parents from the rogue sex ed that they were teaching in schools. And what the law said is that you have a right to be notified and you have a right to opt out. And these parents' rights were being violated. They weren't given that option. So we created an opt-out form, and we said to parents, take this form, turn it in, and if they give you a hard time, come back to us, we're gonna file a lawsuit. It took like maybe 5 minutes, and we were filing lawsuits all over the state. I mean, almost every single school was breaking the law. Half the schools in the state didn't even have a sex education advisory board, which by law you're supposed to have. So we were filing a lot of lawsuits, and unfortunately, when you're in a position where Democrats are in charge and they have the majority over everything, they can amend the law at any time that they want to, and they did that to us. That law that we were working out of, they changed it and they took out the administrative component process. So we filed a lawsuit, and the reason we could file so many is because the lawsuit wouldn't cost us more than maybe $5,000 to $8,000, because there was that administrative process that we'd have to go through first before going to court. Well, they removed that process. What that means is if we wanted to file a lawsuit, we have to go directly to court. So lawsuits costing us $5,000 to $8,000, now we're costing us anywhere from $25,000 to $35,000 just to file and be able to court. So essentially what they did is they cut us at the knees. They knew what they were doing. So that was really frustrating. doing a deep dive with a lot of my donors, I thought, okay, this C3 Great Education Initiative, it's great. We're doing good work. We're getting parents across the finish line. We're winning school board races. This is good, and we're going to keep doing this. But it's not enough. And that's when I met Charlie Kirk. I went to a conference in Las Vegas with Turning Point USA, connected with him and a gentleman named Tyler Boyer, who runs their C4 Turning Point Action. And at this point, I had learned what the Democrats were doing. I learned the operation. All the money was being funneled through 501c3s and 501c4s. And I thought, that's how they get the crappy candidates across the finish line. Like, for example, John Fetterman. Like, does anyone ever wonder how the hell he became a senator? But I like him now. I like him now. I like him now. But back then, I was like, what? How does this happen? And Joe Biden, how does this happen, right? Besides the cheating and the stealing, we know that. But it's the machine, it's the operation behind them. It's the C3 and the C4. So they take the 501c3, they go do all this charity work with these voters, and they get them all riled up and fight for all these different causes. And then 6 months before every election, they turn to the 501c4 and they go back to these parents or these individuals and these voters, and they say, okay, guys, all these things that we've been fighting for the last year and a half, 2 years, now we got to turn around and go vote for this candidate because they support this cause and they support what we've been fighting for. And they hire these community organizers, and it's how I met Mark Fortin. We had a community organizer in Macomb, and he worked closely with us, and we helped Ron Robinson across the finish line, and we did different things with different schools in Macomb. So that was the process with the 501c3 and the 501c4. And so what I had to do, though, to make sure this could even be successful, I had to go out and raise money. And I had a year to do it, and I was able to raise just under $1 million, which wasn't easy, but I did it. And so we took that money, and we hired door knockers, we hired phone bankers, and we hired individuals to do voter education and voter registration across the entire state. This was easy for me because being a successful business owner, my husband and I, we own multiple businesses together, but the medical waste is my baby. So I just built the C3 and the C4 and operated them exactly like a business. We built them up, we created a good culture, we hired good people, we put smart people in managerial positions to make sure we can stay on top of everything, and we ran them successfully. So I told you guys earlier, I'm Chaldean, very strong conservative Catholic community. Unfortunately, and I hate to even say this out loud, but very low voter turnout. 32% voter turnout, which is super low. So I had to make that one of my projects, especially here in Macomb, because I knew it would make a difference for the election. And so I stationed people all across churches in Southeast Michigan on top of the door knocking and chasing the ballots and making the phone calls. And so we were able to take that 32% voter turnout to 76%. It was the best feeling ever, I'll tell you guys. And it was really nice because we were able to help Republicans take back the state house. We were able to help Trump across the finish line. And I was able to show the Chaldean community that their voices matter because they didn't think that they did. And I showed them that when you get out and you go vote, we can make a difference. And these are the things that are going to be important. And this is going to be important going into the general election for this race. I am the only candidate that can pull the Middle Eastern vote, the vote from the Black community. Pastor Lorenzo Sewell has endorsed me. I did a lot of work in the Black community. Thank you. Pastor Sewell and I have done a lot of election integrity work together, but when I was hiring door knockers, I went to Pastor Sewell and different pastors, and I said, we have jobs, if you want jobs. And they said, yeah, we'll take them. And so a lot of our door knockers came from there, and we did a lot of great work together. And so I think these things are gonna be really important because 26 is gonna be a rough year. We all love Trump, but right now, everybody out there doesn't love Trump. And so what that equates to in the midterms is we're gonna have a hard time unless something changes really quick. So we have to get creative. We have to have that strong get out the vote operation, which I have, and I'm the only candidate in this race that even knows how any of this works. But I'm also the only candidate in this race that has these relationships with these national organizations. So a team of door knockers, a team of phone bankers, and a team ready to register new voters, that's all ready to go on day one for the general election. I don't need to get through the primary and then figure out what I'm gonna do. I need to get through the primary and get going on day one. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. And so I'll continue to raise money just the way I did for the C3 and the C4 and for my race right now, which I've been able to do. And I think all these things are gonna be really important. Getting into the Secretary of State's office and the election side of things, which I know is very important to all of you, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Some days I kind of wonder what I'm getting myself into because I think I've seen it all. And then I wake up the next morning and I see something else that Jocelyn Benson has done, or I talk to another clerk and I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's just add it to the list of stuff. And then I have to think about what I want to prioritize when I get in there. So I want to talk about that with you guys. I think the two most important things, number one, we've got to clean up our voter rolls. Right now, we have about, it was 8.4, but I want to say now 8.3-ish million people on our voter rolls, but only 7.7 million people in this entire state actually eligible to vote. So roughly 500,000 extra people on the rolls, so the math is not mathing. That's a problem. When the voter rolls are out of control, that ties directly to our absentee ballots, which can be a primary mechanism for fraud. If there's extra people on the rolls, it is much easier to send a ballot to those 500,000 extra people and no one's ever gonna check. Because what they're doing is they're putting those ballots in the names of voters that we consider low propensity. What that means is these voters don't really get out and vote that much. So hey, if we vote for them and get a ballot in their name, they're not gonna know. You guys aren't gonna know, because guess what? They're gonna hide it. So we gotta clean up the voter rolls. On day one, we take Michigan out of ERIC. I'm not a fan of ERIC. Does everybody know what that is? Good, good. We take Michigan out of ERIC on day one. The other thing I wanna do is I wanna cross-check the voter rolls with a federal database, and what I wanna use is the Department of Homeland Security's database, so that we have social security numbers, names, date of birth. So we cross-check, and obviously to start, because the rolls are not clean, it would be an aggressive audit done monthly. The next thing I want to do is secure those absentee ballots. So I mentioned to you guys in my professional career, strict chain of custody is something that I know how to do. And I think that's what these absentee ballots need, because they should be documented, logged, tracked, and verified at every single handoff, from the voter to the election worker to the postal board to the counting board. So every time there's a handoff, we should document who's handing them off, they need to sign off on it, and we need a timestamp so that if there is a break in the chain of custody, we can identify that break immediately and we can investigate. And if that break happens to be an individual, we hold them accountable and then we prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, because that's what we should be doing. The next thing I want to do is protect our poll challengers. And so this is something that would have to go through state legislature, but I want to champion a poll challenger and a campaign observer bill of rights. And the reason I want to do that is to establish the necessary rights and protections for our poll challengers, because Jocelyn Benson has been coming after them now for the better part of a year. And the issue there is that if our poll challengers lose their access or their rights, I mean, they're our last line of defense in our elections, guys. How are we going to secure them? How are we going to have any oversight? We're going to have nothing but blind spots, and then what? Right? So this is something that people don't think about, but I think about it, and this is something I want to work on going into the Secretary of State's office. But another thing I want to do is really increase transparency. It's non-existent right now, right? I think we all know that. But one of the ways I want to do that is I want to make sure all of you have access to government data, right? Nothing's going to be hidden. And if you send in for a FOIA, I want to make sure it's your right to get back that information that you submit a FOIA for, and it's not going to be outrageously priced, and it's not going to be overly redacted. It is your right to that information. You should see how your government is operating. Let's talk about the Secretary of State side of things. There's a ton that I want to do there. I want to completely redo the website. I want to make it more transparent. I want to make it easier to use. I want to give you guys options to be able to upload documents through the website digitally. So if we can save you a trip to the Secretary of State's office, I'm glad to do that, and I'm sure you guys would be glad to do that too. The other thing too is I want to bring back late appointments, and we'll keep the appointment process. I think that's important, but I also want to bring back an option for being able to walk in, because sometimes there are pressing issues and you need to be able to walk in. Or sometimes when you walk in and the place is empty and they don't want to take you because you don't have an appointment, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no one's there.
No one's there, and they're like, sorry, can't take you because you don't have an appointment. Well, we're going to change that too. That's a policy thing, and we're going to do like, hey guys, if you're not serving anybody, go ahead and take the person that walks in. But I also want to create an express lane so we don't jam things up. That's dedicated to transactions that are maybe 7 or 8 minutes or less, and we can get people in and out, while the rest of the people that have longer or more complex issues can make their appointments. Car dealerships need their own liaison, and that's something I want to work on for them, because they're ending up in the same lines or waits that you guys are in. Again, then it ends up jamming things up. So there's a lot of things that need to be done there, but I want to also bring back Saturday appointments too. I want the office to work for you guys. Our average family across the state is a working class family. You guys cannot get in there between the hours of 9 to 5. So we need to change these things to make sure that you guys can get in there and get in what you need to be done. CDL licensing, for me this is a no-brainer. You need to be able to read, write, and speak English if you're gonna touch a CDL license. Yeah. So that's gonna be a thing in a Monica Yatooma administration. The testing for the CDL licensing. You're allowed to have a translator right now. I didn't know if you guys know that. Yeah, that's how they end up on the roads, right? Yeah. And also they're allowed to take pictures of the test if they don't have their translator on the spot with them. And I'm like, holy cow. They gotta, have you guys seen, do any of you know how heavy these trucks, oh, actually Anthony, you probably know.
Oh, look at me, I'm not driving.
So I forgot you're running for governor. Yeah. These trucks on our roads can be really dangerous, folks, which you already know. I know that you know, but they need to be able to read our road signs. And if they're gonna get out there, they need to be able to pass a very standard test. I'm not saying it needs to be super complex, but they need to know what they're doing if they're gonna get out there on the road with all of us, and if they're gonna get out there on the road with my kids. I have a kid that's gonna be driving soon. I wanna talk about our driving schools. So I've been meeting different families across the state, and I've been meeting with a lot of the different business owners of these driving schools, and the car dealerships, actually. There's a lot of red tape. It's been really difficult for them to even do business in Michigan. And so from a business standpoint, I want to be able to deregulate for them and cut a lot of that red tape and make it easier for them to do business, because I want them to sell cars so that Michigan can collect the sales tax on those cars. And I want them to contribute to our economy, and I want the economy to thrive, because that helps all of us. I don't want to make it more difficult for them to do their jobs. But back to driving schools. Kids these days are not driving right at 16 like I did or like all of you did. They're actually waiting longer for a number of reasons. But the most important reason is that it's too expensive. Car insurance is through the roof, and now they can't even afford to pay to take the driving courses. So I'm sure you guys all know about our public schools and their huge budgets and how they mismanage all their money, right? So what we're gonna do, so there's two options that I'm looking at, but one is reallocate some of that money and bring back driving schools to our schools. So a lot of our lower income families can have access, and their kids can take these driver's training courses and be able to get their license and drive and go out and get a job and work and do the things that they need to do. We can do that. That's one way we can do that. It would be a grant or a subsidy. Those are the two different ways that I'm looking at doing that. So those are some of the things on the Secretary of State's office. You guys don't have this issue here, but in the more northern areas, the more rural areas, it's much more difficult for them to actually get to a Secretary of State's office. We're actually very blessed that we can just walk into one. So what I've told them and what I'll tell you guys is, for those areas, we'll bring in the mobile Secretary of State units. I know we have the kiosks, but I've noticed half the time they're broken. And I looked into the costs of the kiosks. It's very expensive. And so we already have the staff. I'd rather just bring in a mobile SOS unit and bring it up there, a couple times a month, and they can get done what they need to do. The other thing too, as your next Secretary of State, I want you all to know that I will ensure that all instructions given to election officials will actually be lawful, not unlawful, like what we're seeing today with Jocelyn Benson and Jonathan Brader. I think that's really important. I think we really need to secure our elections, because our elections affect everything, right? Our state representatives, our senators, our mayors. If you gotta run for something, our elections play into that. And so if the elections are not secure, and the Black community is a prime example of this, and this is why I've been working with Pastor Sewell, is because they are constantly taken advantage of. And so very mismanaged, a lot of voter fraud, and what's happening is, a lot of absentee ballots being sent in different names into vacant houses, voter trap houses, and they are ending up with elected officials that are not representative of them. Somebody explained to me how somebody like Rashida Tlaib ends up representing a Black community. Does it make sense? No, they wouldn't vote for her if they did go out and vote, but more of them are paying attention now and voting. So these are the things that we need to fix and that we need to address, because if we don't secure our elections, we're gonna keep running into these same problems. We're gonna keep getting the Rashida Tlaibs, and if we don't secure our elections, I tell you guys, honestly, we really don't have anything at all. All the work that I did with the C3 and the C4, all that money that I had to work hard and go raise, none of it's gonna matter if we don't secure our elections. So this race for us upcoming, this year for us upcoming, is really, really important, but this race especially, it's going to be a very expensive race. The Democrats want this seat even more than the governor's seat. They know how important it is. And they know they're in trouble if one of us gets in. They're in trouble if I get in, because I can tell you one of the first things I'm going to do is a full forensic audit of the entire office. Oh yeah, no brainer. Full forensic audit of the last 8 years, and every single person that we can prove has been undermining our elections will be held accountable. That part's easy, but they will also be fully prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. God willing, I'll have a Republican Attorney General to work with. And even if I don't, trust me guys, I'm gonna find a way. I'm gonna make the situation very public. I'm gonna put pressure on our state legislature. I'm gonna put pressure on whoever our governor is. You know, I'm coming for you if it's you. If I don't get a Republican AG and I'm catching people doing all kinds of silly stuff with our elections, yeah. We're gonna get it done, guys. I come with the qualifications and the experience to do this job, but something really important, I wholeheartedly believe that I'm the only candidate in this race that has the backbone to execute everything that I'm talking about and to do the things that need to be done. That's what I've done the last 6 years. I filed the lawsuits. I started the C3. I started the C4. I pushed back against the government overreach. Nobody was getting in my way. And the best part is, I wasn't an elected official. I was not in a position of any power or authority, and I was still able to push back and be successful. So the clerk in this race that says I have my hands tied and I have to listen to Jocelyn Benson, that's bullshit. At least that clerk was in a position of power to do something. That clerk chose not to do something. That makes a difference. So I'm here tonight to ask for your support. I hope I can earn it for state convention. Another important thing we really need to do, guys, is restore faith in our constitutional republic. We've lost a lot of it over the years, and I'm hoping we can do that too. I know we can secure our elections. We just have to get Monica Yatooma on there, and we can get it done. Yeah. I'm confident. I hope to earn your support. I appreciate you guys being here. You guys are listening, so like I can tell I have your attention, and I love it. Thank you, and God bless. Happy to answer any questions. The website is monicaformichigan.com. Do we take questions?
You want to take questions?
I'm happy to take questions. Yeah, right here.
You know, if you have a question, we'll get to everybody, so don't worry about that. But we gotta go, and you gotta talk into this, because this is live stream. That way the people hear it that are watching this.
Hey, Monica. Earlier was mentioned an individual saying that they want to remove the cost on license plate registrations, abolish that. So I believe some of that monies that are retrieved from the state do fund the Secretary of State's. And lacking that money, how do you feel you would be able to replace that funding for the Secretary of State to function?
So I want to say that for as far as registration fees, I want to make it one fee per vehicle, and that's it for the life of the vehicle. And you don't have to renew annually or biannually. I don't believe that we need to do that until, of course, you purchase or lease another vehicle. So that is what I would push for and advocate for. Now, as far as replacing the funding that comes into the state, it actually doesn't need to be replaced. We just need to reallocate, because the budget of the Secretary of State's office over the last couple of years has completely ballooned to $296 million. That's another reason I want to do a full forensic audit to identify all that waste and eliminate a lot of it, but reallocate some of it. And actually, that's one of the areas where I want to reallocate to, is to supplement for the registration fees.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next.
Yeah. He's not allowed to ask a question.
Aw.
I'm joking.
After me, I get one question.
A few weeks ago in Rochester, you were asked a question, both you and Amanda were. Do you think that a rhino or a Democrat is worse for the Republican Party? And neither of you refused. I mean, you were very kind in what you said. Really, neither of you answered the question.
Yeah.
And that is very disheartening, because I mean, we need a fighter, and we need somebody that is going to understand there is no difference between a rhino and a Democrat. They are one and the same. And we need conservative Republicans. And so I just, I hope that you would be willing at some point to say that, because we need fighters right now.
So I'm actually really glad you brought that up. So when that question was asked, it was, do you think rhinos are as bad as Democrats? So my opponent, Amanda, stumbled, right? And I was supposed to answer second, and she kept stumbling. So I jumped in and I said yes, twice. It was an easy yes for me while she stumbled. And she said, well, I'm not sure. And I can tell you, I'm sure it's a hard yes. Let me tell you, actually, I think rhinos are worse than Democrats. Because you know why? The Democrats tell me to my face what they're going to do. The rhinos are going behind my back. So if it was up to me, I'd eliminate all of them. Does that make you feel better? Good.
That was a hold-up. That was the
Next question?
I think Monica would be a hell of a fighter in the Secretary of State office. I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Anthony.
But as far as the Secretary of State, you and I, we believe in the Constitution. What does the Constitution say about how many offices we are supposed to have across the state? Can you answer that first?
One office per county.
And where are we at?
151?
So getting rid of 151 offices, or not 151, but 68 offices, would it motivate you to put everything online instead of the mobile unit or the kiosk? Because during COVID, no Secretary of State office was open and we did everything online anyway. How about promoting that so people don't have to go take a day off work?
Yeah.
And you know, because we're getting rid of those offices, 68 offices, saves the state $63 million a year.
Yeah. So to her point,
They can.
Well, listen, this is why I want to reform and completely rebuild the entire website, because I was saying earlier, I want to be able to let you guys upload documents digitally. Whoever has that tech savviness, go for it. You don't want to come into the office, we're going to give you the options so that you don't have to. But for those of you, and those people exist, and we don't want to discriminate, right? So they want to be able to come into the office, and they want it to be easy, and so we're still going to have that option for them too. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Mark.
So then, back, is this on?
I don't know if it's actually
No.
working.
It's out, it only goes to the light. I'm so sorry. I'm screaming, I'm screaming in people's ears. So, the kiosk, online. I don't want to register to vote at the kiosk at Kroger. That's me, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to register to vote online. So if you're going to stream it, I don't want drop boxes in the nature center so I can vote with no camera. So there's a lot of things that make it easier for people, but it makes it worse for everybody in the long run. So I think you have to be careful in how much you advance the technology, that we're back to the same circle.
That's a really good point, and it reminds me of something I forgot to mention. Registering to vote, you won't be able to do that online or at a kiosk. I would never allow that.
Well, it's there now, right?
Yeah, I would change that, and if you want to register to vote, you have to do it in person, and I want to see your ID, and I want to see proof of citizenship every single time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was a high school student about 40 years ago, and driver's ed was like an extracurricular class taught after school. Why not have driver's ed just be taught like during regular school hours, like one of the 5 regular classes during the day?
That's what I talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Beverly?
great idea.
Get you next.
Yeah, hi, Monica. You and I talked last time you were here about the machines
Yes.
and smaller precincts so we could do the hand counting of the ballots. So we knew that at the end of the election night of the one-day voting, that we would know the results. And then those results could be stuck right on the precinct windows. So every candidate that was running would know exactly how many votes they got per precinct. So you said you wanted to talk more about the machines
Yeah.
today. So I'd like to
Yeah.
hear what you have to say about
Yeah,
the machines.
let's talk about them. I know a lot of people here don't want machines at all, and I don't have a problem with that. But the issue is that they are enshrined into Michigan constitutional code, and so we have to have them. But where the law doesn't stop us is in hand counting. And so I would follow up the tabulator counts with a hand count. Yeah, I would absolutely advocate for that. Now, there are some ways we can safeguard the machines that are not being done right now. There is an RFP that's out for the machines right now, a request for proposal, And I was able to figure out, who that's going through, and I got an email and a phone number. So I'm gonna shoot them an email and say, these are my suggestions for picking a machine vendor. So I think first and foremost, these machines, we should only pick vendors that make machines that are made in the USA. No foreign components in our machines. Yeah, that should be a no-brainer too, but I don't know, you got Jocelyn Benson as Secretary of State, so not really a high IQ. So the other thing with the machines, you have to log into the machine. You can't just use the machine. And so talking to different cybersecurity experts, what I've learned is that different counties across the state and different precincts, they're not changing the login credentials for like 5, 6, 7 election cycles. So think about the turnover of employees and who has access to that machine. And then what makes it even worse is that we have transaction logs on these machines that should be turned on, but they're not being turned on. So when somebody's accessing the machine, we don't know who's accessing it and when and what they're doing. If we just turn on the transaction log, we get that information and we can see it. The other issue is that these machines have a closed source firmware. We have no ability to FOIA the information inside the machines. We have no ability to get any of the information out of the machines. And so I think that's another thing that needs to change. We need open source firmware. We also need to enable a strict and a very strong chain of custody on the code, right, that goes into the machines. So the source code, exactly. So obviously, no access to the internet. I would make sure they didn't have any access to the internet, but a lot of people don't talk about the actual code. So we have a clerk in the Secretary of State's race that says, yeah, I did this hash validation, and I'm not sure if he really even knows what that means. But what a hash validation is, and let me break it down for you, it's you run a sequence, and if the code of the machine is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you hash validate, and if it comes back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh great, it's clean, and it looks like everything's great, except it's not. Who checked that executable code that's inside the machine before it went into the machine? How do we know it wasn't corrupted before it went into the machine? Who's checking? Nobody. Nobody, and nobody talks about that. And it didn't take much for me to learn about that, and I'm no clerk, right? Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, I would develop a process where we have cybersecurity experts, nonpartisan cybersecurity experts, to say, check this code before we make it executable. I want to make sure it's not corrupted. And then we'd have a process, right? Multiple people getting this code into the machines, and then we oversee that process and make sure it's not touched or corrupted in any way. And then we plug it into the machines. And then we know that source code is not corrupted. And that's another safeguard that we can put in place. There are things that can be, there's a lot of things that can be done. The problem is nobody wants to do them. We need to get somebody in there that wants to do them.
I think I heard earlier something about getting rid of the branch offices. Did I hear that right?
Not getting rid of branch offices. It's just, Anthony had mentioned that in the Constitution, we are allotted 1 Secretary of State office per county. So that would be 83 offices, right? Right now we have 151. So there are some areas that might need more, but some areas don't, and it's wasteful. And so we were just talking about where we could eliminate.
Okay, if they were going to
Waste.
get rid of them, I was going to ask where would you get your driver's license picture
No,
taken?
no, we're
Okay.
keeping them. You're still going to go to your SOS office.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
To bring up the question regarding internet use for, like the COVID, I remember reading in the Midwesterner, the people in rural counties were really irritated because they had the most spotty internet, so they couldn't even connect to the Secretary of State. That would be my concern. Is there? It's different. I would have never thought that until I read that myself, you know. And so they didn't even get an opportunity to even make a connection with it. They were running with plates that were expired. That was happening, and Jocelyn Benson knew this, of course. I mean,
She knows.
it didn't faze her.
No, she doesn't care, especially the rural areas, because she knows they're red, so she doesn't care if they register to vote.
That I
But
hadn't
you know
even
where
put
she is
together.
taking the mobile SOS unit? To all the universities and registering the kids to vote.
Hi there. Thanks
Hi.
for attending tonight. The public is invited to certify election machines before we actually vote. Is there something I can say or do or to prove that the machine is not going to skew my vote. You know, they run a selected, I don't know, 50 ballots through a machine, and then the tape coming out of the machine is going to prove that there was that many for that, and this one was screwed up. I've been there many times, but is there something I can say or do that would help me identify a machine that may be skewing the voter data?
That's tough because the hacking is occurring inside the machine. So when you participate in the public accuracy testing, that's great, but how close do they let you get to the machine?
Oh, sometimes we're putting the ballots
Yeah,
in.
they let you put the
Oh,
ballots in?
yes. Uh-huh, yeah.
But still, the issue is they're being hacked and corrupted from the inside. And it's coming from a completely outside source. It's coming from some cyber security expert from God knows where that's hacking into these machines. And I know that people say, well, yeah, we can take out the modems. And I know we have a clerk in this race that says, yeah, I took out the modems. But I don't know if he realizes that there are 4 other drivers in these machines that still make them entirely hackable. You can take out the modems as much as you want.
Okay, because I work the elections, and we used to have to put them on like airplane mode or something like that, and we don't do that anymore.
You don't? Why?
No.
How come?
It's not in the instructions, so.
Who's your clerk?
I have a new one. Let me see. At Washington Township. It's a lady,
Oh, okay.
but I know I used to have another one that. Audrey Brown, yes, yes. Yes, ex-wife, yeah.
I'm on camera, right? Yeah. Thanks for letting me know.
Next question?
I have another question. What is your opinion on the provisional ballots? And another part is, what are you going to do with those precincts that don't balance?
That's a great question. Right, hopefully they're going to.
Well, they don't.
Right, so there's that, yeah. Yeah. You know, I found out that there's a law that if a precinct doesn't balance, you can't hand count, you can't recount, which I thought was really interesting. So it's super backwards. I'd have to work with the state legislature because if a precinct doesn't balance, well, we should never be certifying an election. Right now, the Board of Canvassers, it's kind of like, almost like a rubber stamp. It comes to them, and even when it doesn't balance, they're just stamping in it. It's like, why are we doing that? So I think there needs to be strict penalties for anybody that's doing that so that they know that we're not gonna do that anymore. But also I need to work with the state legislature to undo that law because if a precinct doesn't balance, I need to be able to recount. We need to be able to recount, right? Yeah, so.
And then the provisional ballot, if you can't prove that you are who you are, they'll give you the provisional ballot. And they put the ballot in the machine anyway, and there's nothing they're gonna do about it later.
No, and I know sometimes it goes through that adjudication process, which is a complete mechanism for fraud, because then it's left in that poll worker's hands or whoever's handling it, and they're just either filling out the ballot or they're just, yeah. So I'm working on a plan for that process. I can't take it away, but I'm working on it, just know that, because I don't like it.
Good evening. I have a question regarding your proposal to have a lot of the work done online. I'm unfamiliar with any state system that has not been hacked. How much faith do you put in DTMB to actually secure the state systems so that Michigan residents' information is not being stolen?
Well, my faith level is a little bit low, I will admit. But that's one of the things that I want to address and work on. So, and that's going to be, in partnership with different security teams, cybersecurity teams of, the FBI, our local police, our state police, but also, I would say highly experienced cybersecurity experts that have technical experience, IT experience, that actually have a background in government and doing this work to make sure that we can secure these systems and this online process, because you're right, we are vulnerable.
Very.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust DTMB to plug in a computer, much less secure it.
You seem like you know a lot about this. What's your background?
Actually, I'm in transportation.
Oh. Well, jack of all trades.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Mr. Yatooma. We've discussed about veteran plate issues before, but my question is, what can you do when you get into office, sir, to look at the 8 felony violations that Jocelyn Benson has done in the current office holder right now and submit those violations over to our future Attorney General candidate for prosecution?
So this is why I mentioned the full forensic audit. If it was up to me, I would just walk in there on day 1 with the FBI and handcuff her, right? Unfortunately, I have to follow the law and there's a process. But this is why I said full forensic audit, so that I can have all the evidence, all the receipts, and we follow that legal process to a T so we don't mess up, so I can give everything to the Attorney General, and hopefully he knows what to do to get that job done and arrest her. And if for whatever reason he doesn't, I'll help him and we make sure we get that job done and arrest her. But it's like top priority.
Any other questions?
Am I allowed a second question?
Sure.
Okay, a lot of ineligible voters are signed up through the motor voter situation. I know that's a federal law and we can't probably bail out of it entirely, but
Right.
I'm just hoping you have something in mind to address that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of issues with automatic registration and permanent absentee lists. I looked into just eliminating permanent absentee lists altogether. And we can't because of Proposal 2 enshrining that into our Constitution. But what I would like to do, if you do want an absentee ballot, and even if you're on the permanent absentee list, I want to put in place some sort of trigger so that you just have to validate yearly. I need to see your driver's license and your proof of citizenship yearly, right? We can't just put you on the permanent absentee voter list and then you just stay there and it goes unchecked. As far as automatic voter registration, voter law, it's a federal law, so I can't take that away. But again, when you're coming to register for a driver's license, I have to see proof of citizenship, and if you're a non-citizen, that's fine. But what I'd like to do with the driver's license in very big, bold, bright letters is say not eligible for voting on those driver's licenses, and then offer some very rigorous training for our election workers and our law enforcement so that they understand election law and how the process works, and so that they know that every time somebody comes to vote, they have to check ID and that there's a process there. I think that election training is going to be really important. And actually, this reminded me of something else that I want to do. Right now, election workers, if they do notice any election fraud, they have to notify the police, and the police have to then take care of the situation. So I'd like to remove that unnecessary extra step and allow election workers that identify voter fraud to be able to go directly to the Attorney General themselves. You need the microphone.
Thank you. So, 2 questions. Back to the driver's license. So, I have a friend who's a nail tech, and his brother-in-law came over and got a driver's license, but he can't speak any English. And I said, well, how did he get a driver's license? And he said, well, he had one in Vietnam, so you can apply for one here. I'm like, was it in English? He said, no, the whole test was in Vietnamese. So when you go to Secretary of State's office, they give you Spanish, Arabic, English. So how can he drive when he can't read Shaner Road or Hayes? I mean, how does he know how to get anywhere? And there's an accident every day on Gross. People are getting head-on collisions because they're giving those out. So same thing with the CDL, but even in your family van, they can't read English.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up because I forgot to talk about it. But it would be the same process, similar process to CDLs. If you want a driver's license, again, we don't want to discriminate to anybody coming over here, but there needs to be certain checks and balances. If you want a driver's license, you need to be able to read English and pass the test on your own without a translator. In English. In English. In English. My family came here and had to do it, and they did it.
And then the last question I had, is Jocelyn recusing herself for overseeing the election that she's running in and you're running for?
I wish she would.
Well, I think she should.
She has a huge conflict of interest. Have you guys, well, yeah, we've seen it in Arizona. We saw what happened there.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be Arizona 2.0.
Exactly. But I feel like there's some kind of federal, maybe a federal oversight, nothing we can do.
Reject.
No, reject. Okay, well,
We
I
checked.
mean,
And we,
it's ridiculous.
I know, and then we reached out to the DOJ, and I had reached out to Harmeet Dillon, and remember they sued her for the voter rolls, but then that got dismissed. So for those of you that don't know, it got dismissed. So Judge Halajarbo came back and said, she's not saying the voter rolls are clean. She dismissed the case because there was no probable cause. And she said, we can't just go on a fishing expedition to find the issues on the voter rolls. I need you guys to bring me something, right, to prosecute on. And so the DOJ was not able to do that. So I think they're going back to the drawing board, but as of now, it's dismissed, unfortunately.
Well, I think it would be a very valid point in whoever you debate on the Democratic side that you're up against maybe two people in that position.
Because that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Are you gonna knock doors for me or what?
Of course. Of course.
Last one for me, I promise.
Uh-huh.
So as governor, I would be pushing for legislation to make it illegal for a Secretary of State to run for office while holding that seat.
Mhm.
Would you support legislation of that nature?
Yes, hard yes.
Any other questions? No? Well, I'd like
Great
to,
questions.
no more questions?
Nope. Thank you, guys.
Want to thank you, Monica, for being here.
Yeah, the website is Monica for Michigan if anybody wants more information. And we have pamphlets in the back.